Hi, everyone. Welcome to the webinar today. Thanks for taking time out of your day to join us today. We're going to be talking about how to build a successful website accessibility program. We have a few things before we get into the discussion today that we just want to quickly cover. This is what today's agenda looks like. So we'll be talking about what does a successful accessibility program look like? What are some of the steps to get started? What are some of the benefits, the challenges, and how they can be handled? How to get stakeholder buy-in, the benefits for SEO, and we'll save a little bit of time at the end for some Q&A. My name is Joshua Eden. I am a senior customer success manager over here at Lumar, and joining me today are two of my absolute favorite people that I get to work with, and I'm going to have them introduce themselves, starting with Nina.
Hi, everyone. So I am, as Josh said, I'm Nina Roby. I'm a product manager on the digital product management team, and I lead the digital accessibility program at Red Hat.
I am JP Sherman. I'm the principal project manager for search experience, and findability across the Red Hat network of sites.
There are so many sites, so many sites. Thank you all, Nina, JP, for joining me today. Few housekeeping things that we'll just go through super quickly. First, if you have any questions, please feel free to type those questions into the Q&A box at the bottom of the screen. We hope to leave a little bit of time at the end of the session today to answer some of those questions as they come through. At the end of this webinar, there's going to be the chance for y'all to leave us some feedback about what worked, what didn't work, what was missing, what was confusing, maybe leave ideas for topics that you'd like to see us talk about in the future. That takes less than 60 seconds to complete, unless you want to leave us a lot of feedback. And then there's going to be an on-demand email that comes out a few days after this via email, maybe early next week, given the holidays. We'll see, but that will come out. You'll get a copy of that. If you need some closed captions for today's session, you can click on the captions icon. It's the little CC icon in the settings. There's instructions on the screen on how to do that. Just in case those aren't super clear, you click the captions icon CC. You click the three dots. I call that a hot dog. I don't know what other people call that. If they're stacked vertically, that's a hamburger. This is a hot dog to me. So you click the hot dog. From the hot dog icon, you choose show subtitle. We also have the enabling live transcript. Again, you can click that CC button and then choose view live transcript. And then the webinar, again, will actually be recorded and distributed in a few days. So just before we dive in to our conversation with Nina and JP, we actually have a couple questions, two questions to help us understand more about you, the audience who have made the time to join us today. So the first question is, what is your current role within your organization? Leave this up for about 10 seconds and then show the results. You're an accessibility lead. You sit under DEI, product, QA, tech SEO, UX designer, web development, or other. And let's see what these results look like. Got some stuff in the chat: training instructor, internal communications lead, UX folks in here, SEO, product, QA, tech SEO. Yeah. Good mix of people. Awesome. Thank you for sharing. The second question that we have, again, just to help us better understand the audience, who we got out here today, is who owns accessibility in your organization? Do you have a dedicated accessibility team? Maybe it's the DEI team. Maybe it's diversified across the organization. Maybe multiple people work on accessibility. It's QA, tech SEO, UX, web dev. Or maybe you're in your infancy. You're just getting started. No one owns it quite yet. accessibility, it's diversified, little hybrid, tech SEO UX, web dev, and just getting started. Quite a few that are just getting started. Man, I'm excited that you made the time to be here today because Nina and JP are absolute rock stars. And I think I hope this conversation is beneficial for everyone, especially those of you who are just getting started. So Nina, what does a successful accessibility program look like?
Well, I think within a successful accessibility program, you have to have a strong leadership commitment so that accessibility can be prioritized, and that you have the ability to allocate the resources to do the necessary work. A strong policy and a commitment to accessibility is something that needs to be understood across the organization and is well supported. You would have accessibility expertise within your organization. So that might be expertise across different roles. So you would have designers who are passionate about accessibility and would be able to support the accessibility in the design process. Engineers, again, the same that would support engineering, product managers who can ensure that accessibility is prioritized as part of their initiatives and so on. You would also have accessibility training and resources available to enable you to scale accessibility across the organization. Small team of accessibility champions can't do everything. So providing those resources and opportunities to scale up your teams so that they understand their roles and responsibilities is super important. And also a successful accessibility program will want to embed accessibility into their processes, so that accessibility isn't something that's bolted on at the end. It's kind of a little bit like building a high rise and then afterwards figuring out how to fit in an elevator. So accessibility is kind of just the way that you do things. It's part of your processes. So an example would be that at Red Hat, we have a design system that's built with accessibility in mind, and we provide documentation to support the implementation of those different components in an accessible way. You know, we also provide things like checklists and testing support so that when we're building new templates or digital products, issues can be flagged and fixed throughout that whole process. I think you also want to have systems and tools in place to be able to measure progress. You need to be able to celebrate those wins and share those stories across the organization so that you can continue to get that support and that advocacy so that you can keep moving the needle forward. And of course, any successful accessibility program is aligned with business goals, you know, that help to get that leadership buy-in. And also it means that you're building your strategy and your roadmap in line with those business goals, because no organization can do everything, right? If you prioritize everything, you prioritize nothing. So being laser focused on those shared goals can really help to get that support that's needed from your teams.
That's so good. As you were going through that, Nina, I was reminded that you and I had a conversation what feels like forever ago about how within Red Hat, it's not just about creating like a successful, accessible website and digital products for like external clients. You all also have like a laser focus on making sure that your internal users, the folks that work at Red Hat, also have accessible tools internally and accessible items internally available to them. And I think that also probably plays into this a little bit too, right? It's not just about the external end user, it's also about the internal end user.
Absolutely.
Cool. So what are the steps to get started? Because that's a lot that leads into what it looks like to be successful. So we have quite a few people that responded to that second poll question saying like, hey, we are just getting started in this, where we what is step one? I'm putting one foot in front of the other. What do you think like step one, step two kind of look like?
I think it's really important to understand where you are, both in terms of like how accessible are our products, our websites, our digital experiences, and also what's the level of maturity in our organization, right? Like the knowledge and skills that we already have available. So if you're thinking about products, websites, and digital experiences, you would want to do some kind of an audit. And there are tools that are available out there, like the Lumar tool, for example, can help with this. So even though automated testing doesn't catch all of those issues, it's often a really good starting point to help you to be able to identify some of that low-hanging fruit so that you can start tackling those issues. And then I think in terms of like the maturity of your organization, you want to be talking to people in different roles and getting an understanding of what's the level of awareness, what are the attitudes, what's the knowledge and the skills that associates in those different roles have, you already have in your organization. And you can do this internally, but also there are consultancy organizations out there that you can help with that can provide like gaps analysis survey, and even some consultancy organizations will come in and conduct those, qualitative interviews to get that qualitative data. And that's a really great place to start because it can help you to build a strategy and a roadmap, so that you can really help to kind of prioritize where you're going to put your resources first. Which kind of brings me to the next step, which I think is you want to have a policy and a strategic plan that works for your organization. So when we were writing our policy at Red Hat, we got input and feedback from a lot of different associates across the organization. And this not only encourages that buy-in and that commitment, but it also means that once your policy is finalized and agreed upon, there are a lot less surprises because you've had that communication throughout that whole process, and it helps to raise that awareness. So I would recommend as well that as you're working on your policy, you begin thinking about what are those roles and responsibilities that will enable a successful implementation of that policy, right? So at Red Hat, we outlined those roles and responsibilities as we were working on the policy document so that when the policy was launched, we were able to provide that supporting documentation, which was a really good starting point for us. And I would also say that having agreed upon standard for your organization is really helpful in providing that consistency and giving yourselves a clear kind of measurable framework for your policy and your strategic plan. When we agreed our policy, we kind of linked, when we agreed our standard, should I say, we kind of linked that with our policy so that we would be prepared then to kind of update that standard when the demands and needs of the accessibility landscape as it's changing. So that's kind of what I'd recommend as a starting point. And then you want to start thinking about enablement and how to scale that. So it's things like looking at what the tools and resources that you want to provide to be able to deliver on that promise. And that's where your strategy comes in, because you can't do everything at once. So you'll want to build out a remediation plan, thinking about how you want to kind of prioritize those issues and tackle them within the constraints of the resources that you have.
One of the reasons I thought it would be great to like have the two of you as part of this conversation is like, Nina, you bring this very like robust knowledge around how to get accessibility really implemented just across the organization, get a lot of internal buy-in. JP, you and I had talked a while ago that there was a point in time where maybe accessibility wasn't as ingrained at Red Hat, and you were someone who really championed to help accessibility become something that was really central and core to the organization and to the business. From just an SEO's perspective, for any of the SEOs that are out there, who maybe don't have an accessibility champion or who are really pushing to get this off the ground, is there any advice that you would give them as like an initial first step?
I think the very first thing that I really wanted to, in terms of advice and getting accessibility started from a practicing SEO, is really understanding that SEO and accessibility are really kind of two parts of the same shape.
Hmm.
In the fact that understanding that Google, so strictly about the SEO effects, Google wants to rank content that makes Google look like it's trustworthy. Google loses money if they don't rank trustworthy things. And from a very kind of basic business perspective, accessibility removes barriers for a significant population of people who process information differently than other people. And so by purposely casting a net that includes people who process information differently, you have a larger net. And because this net is there, it subtly changes like the intent of how people search. And Google is very, very focused on understanding the user intent. And so I think it was like Wayne Gretzky, a hockey player, says like, you always want to skate to where the puck is going to be, because if you're skating to where it is now, you're going to miss it every single time. And I kind of see it as SEO and accessibility this is about future proofing. It's about removing barriers, and it's about understanding humans.
Yeah. Thanks, JP. And I know at the end, one of the things that we'll talk about in addition to this is what is some of the benefit to SEO. So we'll even come back because there's probably more to even unpack here. We have a third poll question. What is the primary driver for your organization's digital accessibility efforts? And it could be a combination of these. We're just doing single answer on this one. So whatever from your perspective feels kind of like the driver, the primary driver, whether that's legal or regulatory compliance, an enhanced value proposition and customer demand, creating an inclusive culture. Maybe there's something else that wasn't on our radar that stands out because it's the right thing to do. It's a good answer, Jamar. I like that. Leave this up for a couple more seconds. Legal regulatory compliance seems to be that top answer, followed by enhanced value proposition and customer demand and inclusive culture. Thank you all. Next up, what are some of the benefits of having a successful accessibility program?
Is that one for me?
Yeah. We'll start with you. Yeah.
I find it hard to imagine why we would even need to justify the case for accessibility, but that's my thing. With somewhere between like 20 or 30% of the world's population with some form of disability, why would we want to exclude potential customers from using our products and services? You know, we're in a digital world where we rely so much on those websites and digital experiences. So it just makes sense that we would want to be inclusive, right? But if you did need to justify ROI, then let's talk about, you know, enhancing your reputation as an organization. It's becoming more and more important, I think, that customers care about who they're doing business with. You know, they want to know that the organizations that they are supporting are doing the right thing, you know. expanding market research, reach, should I say. So you've got that 20 to 30% of increased market share potential there. Improving the usability of your sites for all your customers, because basically accessible websites are really great for everyone. And then, of course, looking at JP, we've got the advantages that provides for SEO and searchability. And also accessibility promotes innovation, right? A lot of the successful innovations that have come from designing and building things for people with disabilities. Like most of the blind people that I know use iPhones because of all those built-in accessibility features, but I use a lot of those features as well. And I'm sure that a lot of people on this call use them too, even if you're not aware of where they came from. So, and I kind of wonder how many people on this call have a Google Home device or ask Alexa to play music while they're cooking dinner. You know, these are all built on technologies that were designed for people with disabilities. And last but not least, you know, how about just mitigating those costs associated with lawsuits and potential loss of business?
Yeah, Nina, as you were talking, I'm reminded of Lumar has a good partnership with an accessibility organization, like an industry leader, a company called Quality Logic. And as we've worked with them and had conversations with them, something that they've made aware to us is the fact that, you know, there's a very large community of users who are low to no vision, and all of those folks are very tight knit, and they all communicate with each other, and they get together. The word of mouth in that community is very strong. And I just remember a no vision user having a meeting with us and just talking to us about how within that very tight knit, that very communicative community, when one user tends to find maybe a website or a product or something that isn't inclusive, that isn't accessible to them, that isn't something that they can use, that isn't optimized for them, they really word of mouth it, and it's something that that community really rallies behind, and they'll almost all kind of go on a sort of like strike against whatever that product, whatever that company, whatever that organization is, right? So there is an element, kind of what you said at the top of all of this, about like there is an element of and leaving users out. There's going to be revenue, there's going to be services, there's going to be things left on the table for a pretty good sized group of people who are very tight knit, who really band together.
Yeah, I agree. And it works the other way as well. You know, when, like we said with the iPhone, if you have products and services that are really accessible, word gets around, and that's really beneficial for everyone.
What are some of the challenges with building an accessibility program, a successful accessibility program, and how can they be handled? How has Red Hat addressed some of them? How have you addressed some of those challenges?
I think probably one of the biggest challenges with any large organization is scalability, right? How do you make sure that you're implementing those best practices across the entire organization? You might have some teams that are doing really well with accessibility. You know, they have expertise, they're prioritizing accessibility, they have the knowledge to be able to do the right things. But that doesn't necessarily mean that that same best practice is happening all the way across the organization, and that can be challenging. So how do we tackle that? I would say thinking about the important piece, I think, when you're tackling scalability is in your storytelling and communications plan, thinking about how you're sharing the success of one team and how that can impact another. You want to make sure as well that you're collaborating as much as possible across those teams and breaking down those silos. Talking to each other is really helpful. And creating communication channels can be really helpful as well for sharing success across the teams. Other strategies I think that can be really helpful is one of the things we're doing at Red Hat is we're implementing a champion program across the organization. So we're opening up that champion program to be able to provide training and support to associates who are interested in getting involved in accessibility, that can help to kind of spread the word, improve their own knowledge and expertise, and then help that to scale across the organization. And then one of the other things we've had a lot of luck at Red Hat with is raising awareness through events like Global Accessibility Awareness Day. We make like a whole week-long event around Global Accessibility Awareness Day. And we do things like we create short videos with quizzes that are kind of fun and super quick to do, but that will engage people. And we offer rewards for participation, things like that. We have AMA sessions, and sometimes we'll invite accessibility experts to those. And sometimes, you know, associates who have disabilities that will kind of share their experiences. So that, I mean, we're seeing participation in events like that really growing as we go from one year to the next. So I think that's those kind of tools and strategies can be really helpful in helping to scale on a big organization. And then I also think one of the challenges can be prioritization, especially when you're just starting out, because it can feel a little bit overwhelming. You know, sometimes you do an audit and it can reveal like hundreds, sometimes thousands of issues. And where do you start? So, and I think there are a number of things that can help with prioritization. Having that strategic plan and that roadmap that's aligned to your business goals can really help to create that focus. You can use prioritization matrices to help to direct the conversations around like, what are the issues and why does this matter and where should we be focusing our efforts first? I also think it's important to have those conversations with key stakeholders about their priorities so that you can get a realistic commitment, giving you an opportunity then to be able to kind of update your roadmap as and when you need to do. And I definitely think having an awareness of what the priorities are across your team so that you're not asking people to do what's impossible. You know, while at the same time having conversations around these are the things that are really going to make an impact and they're really going to matter to our customers. And also what's the low-hanging fruit that can really make a difference within the constraints of, you know, the tools and the resources that you're working with. Another thing I think that's can be really helpful is having your eye on those big ticket items that you know are coming as an opportunity to bake accessibility in from the start, because that can be really good for, you know, longevity and future proofing the work that you're doing.
This is going to be for both of you, but we'll start with Nina. And I might frame it a little bit differently when I get to you, JP. Nina, how do you get buy-in from key stakeholders?
I think I spoke to this a little bit in my answer to the first question. And one of the key things here is really having your business case down and well articulated, having that well-organized documentation. Having a strategy, of course, that's well aligned to your core business goals, because if you don't have that, you're not going to win the hearts of leadership. So I think that is probably super important to start with. And then also, I think just communication is key. Sharing the stories that matter. You know, there are ways that you can help people to understand and empathize. If you see someone struggling with a website or a product, that can really make an impact. And I know I've had that conversation with fellow associates and demonstrated blockers and things, and that can be really powerful. Using events like Global Accessibility Awareness Day to raise that awareness, and inviting associates with disabilities who are willing to share their stories, that can also be really powerful. But I think it's important to remember that communication isn't just about telling the stories. It's about listening as well. So I'm super passionate about accessibility, and it's my primary role at Red Hat. But even I can get overwhelmed sometimes. And so I have to remember when I'm working with colleagues that they're also juggling multiple priorities, working on challenging deadlines, and, you know, sometimes with limited resources. So I think it's also important to really listen and understand the situation so that you can work with the hand that you dealt with, right? So you want to bring people in and get them committed to the journey. And to do that, you really kind of have to appreciate and value the contributions that you get from everyone on your team, even if sometimes they push back. You know, no one's ever going to tell you, I don't believe in accessibility, or I don't think it's worthwhile. But they might question a priority or ask for more time. So I think it's about communicating the right messages in the right way, but also listening and understanding the situation of the people that you're working with.
Yeah, I love that. And JP, for you, I'm going to frame it a little bit differently. I think one of my favorite little like behind the curtains fun fact, right, is that like JP and Nina actually sit in the same organization under Red Hat. So they work hand in hand, and Red Hat does view the work that you, JP, do and the work that Nina does as very interconnected and inseparable, right? Like you guys work in lockstep. So my question to you, the way that I would reframe this to you, JP, is how do you help champion accessibility? How do you help champion what Nina and her team works on to stakeholders from your end?
That's a really good question. Okay, so I don't normally quote from the play Hamilton. Okay, that's a lie. I'm always quoting Hamilton. Um, from my perspective, I think one of the struggles, one of the ways that I look at is making sure that Nina gets into the room where it happens. Because there are so many other things happening. There's so many other products being built, templates being designed, and from an SEO perspective, being in the room where it happens allows the creative SEO and the tech SEO to lend their input into how these things get presented to the world and how these things work. And if the SEO is in the room, Nina, the accessibility person, also needs to be in the room as well. Because again, this is about um, making sure that when humans are looking for information, these humans can consume the information that they will eventually find. And when it comes to, being able to collaborate across products, pages, technology stacks, and things like that, um, making sure that um, the developers, that the UI UXers, the SEO, and the accessibility people are all working from the same kind of like same goal set, and then being able to convert them into, when they go into other meetings, making sure that, oh, they're talking about how humans are going to be interacting with this thing. We need to talk to Nina. We're talking about how people are going to find this on search engines. We need to bring in the SEO. So for me, it's about kind of making sure that I'm also fluent in the value of accessibility and making sure that she gets into the rooms where things happen.
That is a great line to quote from Hamilton. If you're going to quote something from Hamilton, lovely. I think we only have one more question left, and then we'll we have a few things to cover. Then we'll get to a little bit of the Q&A for the questions that have come through. JP, this one's going to be a little bit more geared towards you. Although Nina, of course, if you have something that you want to add, please feel free. Does accessibility benefit SEO, and if so, how? We talked about that a little bit on the second point, about like findability, designing stuff for everyone. What other areas, JP, do you think SEOs can help talk about the benefit of accessibility?
Yeah, so I mean, short answer is yes. The harder answer is how. And so there are a couple of ways that I look at it. When it comes to accessibility and how it affects SEO, there are quantitative ways that SEO and accessibility should work hand in hand. And so I'll talk about that real quick. From a quantitative perspective, the way that I started looking at accessibility is by looking at screen readers. And if I can't understand what the screen reader is saying, somebody else probably won't as well. And so understanding how information architecture and its representation in like a screen reader is really important. And if my information architecture is from a technical term wonky or unhelpful, then that translates directly into how does Google see this site? Does it see it as well organized? Does it see it as logical? Does it see it as topics flowing into subtopics, flowing into topics? And that is an artifact of how Google crawls, consumes, and understands anthropomorphizing here, but understands the site. Another really good quantitative way that I look at is from a content perspective. From what I understand, a lot of accessibility isn't just about font sizes or font choices. It's about using kind of, and correct me if I'm wrong, Nina, but like universal examples. And so I wouldn't just use Southern US colloquialisms as a part of my content strategy. If I wrote something like bless your heart, that's a Southern colloquialism. That may not translate to an international audience. That may not even translate to a West Coast audience.
Mm.
And so accessibility is understanding how language affects the actual words in the language affects what people look for and how they understand it. So that's another big deal. Qualitatively, it's really, again, it's about future proofing. It's about skating to where the puck is going to be. And honestly, it's really about in the service of the business goals, making sure that if you know that, I think this statistic was 20 to 25% of people process visual information differently. These are people, these are actual humans who need to get these goods and services. And if they can't, and the thing is that if they can't find it on your site, they will find it somewhere else.
Mm.
And I will say that, like, I'm not afraid of saying, like, sometimes fear can be a powerful motivator. If you're not the one giving them that experience, they will find somebody else who will give them the experience that they're looking for. And that is revenue. That is like, things don't convert if they're not found. So again, this is about understanding humans, understanding behavior, understanding the technology that it serves, and then making sure that when people are looking for information or products, it is structured, written, and on top of this tech stack that supports accessibility. Sorry, that was kind of a long-winded way, but I hope it made sense.
Yeah. Nina, I just want to give space for you. I don't know if there's anything that you want to necessarily add here, but you're more than welcome to.
I agree with everything JP said. Absolutely. I think understanding that you are building things for humans is super important for both accessibility and SEO. But yeah, I mean, like obvious accessibility features like well-structured content, properly nested headings, semantic HTML, good quality alt text, video transcripts. These are all accessibility features that can help to support SEO, because generally accessible websites are going to provide better overall user experience. So, and I know that JP's talked about this before, the importance for searchability and search engine optimization is based on the quality, the content, and the way that your site is presented and organized, because from what I understand, JP, and correct me if I'm wrong, that can help to create those positive signals for search engines. So just having a better quality site that is accessible for everyone is going to support SEO and findability.
Yeah, that for everyone part is pretty important. Just for the audience, we're kind of nearing the end of the session. We're going to be going to Q&A here in just a moment. We had a couple questions come through on the chat that we'll talk about. Early on in the discussion and the conversation, something that Nina talked about was just kind of like identifying issues at scale, helping with prioritization, just breaking out the issues as they exist for the different WCAG compliance rules. Just as a heads up, this is something that we, of course, get to help at Lumar. We get to help Red Hat with, where we do have the ability to help with identifying issues at scale. We also are able to help with some issue prioritization using our health scores. That's what that little blue box is some folks, when they come into the tool on the accessibility side and they're not sure where to begin, we try to get them somewhere to begin, because it can be overwhelming to know where to start. If you scan that QR code in the right side, just as a heads up, we have a free accessibility wiki with code examples and suggested fixes to just take a look at some common website accessibility issues. If you'd like, before we get to the Q&A, if you'd like a demo of the platform and like an accessibility audit, we'll throw that poll question up super quickly. No pressure. Yes, maybe later. Not at this time. Totally cool. And then we'll go to the questions while this is up. So the first question that came through was, Nina, that accessibility is often perceived as an additional cost, and the benefits are sometimes difficult to share. What are some of the accessibility KPIs that you might recommend or use that you were talking about at the beginning of like building that successful program and building those KPIs to start? What does that maybe look like for you?
I think, I think when you get that kind of pushback is when your accessibility efforts are focused on adding things like as a bolt-on, right? Because there's that feeling, oh, it's an extra thing that I have to do. Where you can really help with that is if you are looking at existing processes in your organization and your, like I said, business goals, that you're aligning to those business goals, and building accessibility in where it fits. I think that is the way to go. If you are looking at an existing process and thinking, how can we implement accessibility throughout this process so that we're just making it part of what we do, I think is helpful, instead of it feeling like it's an extra thing for people to do. But you know, it is challenging because sometimes you have to kind of slow down to speed up. If you are building something to a tight deadline and you don't have time to focus on accessibility during that process, you often then will find yourself spending more time and resources to fix things that maybe didn't need to be broken in the first place. And I think it's helping people to understand that overly focusing on remediation isn't going to benefit in the long run. It's much more cost efficient and effective to build it into what you're already doing than it is to kind of go back and retroactively fix things. So that would be my suggestion.
The second question that we got was from someone who just said, hey, you know, we're really early in our accessibility journey. They noted that about 90% of their products are apps. They were just curious, Nina, if you had any maybe tools or resources that you're aware of that might be able to help make sure that they're building an accessible app, or maybe there's an audit checker or some type of automated tool that you're aware of from your perspective?
Yeah, definitely. I would definitely start with the Web Content Accessibility Guidelines. They also have now guidelines that are more kind of specific to apps and products as well as web. So start by looking there, the Web Content Accessibility Guidelines. And also there are like a lot of organizations now that provide those accessibility testing tools for web are also provide accessibility testing tools for app that are specifically work well with apps. So looking at those, like you could look at DQ is one organization that offers those tools and capabilities. Yeah.
Awesome. Thanks, Nina. Last question that came through is just from your perspective, do you think next year's EAA will, like GDPR, be a watershed for digital accessibility?
I think the EAA is definitely going to impact organizations all over the world. I mean, we're kind of in a global. Most organizations now are working across different borders, so you have to be aware of the laws and regulations in different countries. If you are doing business, even if you're based in the US, if you're doing business with any of those, I think it's 27 member states of the European Union, you will need to be thinking about your accessibility, your approach to accessibility, because more and more it's in 2025, when that law comes into effect at the end of June 2025, essentially what that means is that the countries, the member states of the European Union will have to have laws in place around accessibility. So anybody doing business in those countries, they're going to be getting, demands and requests from their customers or potential customers to meet those requirements. So I guess the short answer is yes, I definitely think it's going to impact. I think it's a really positive thing that we're doing this, because in the digital world that we're in, we definitely need to be prioritizing equal access for everyone, in the digital environment. So, but yes, it is gonna, I believe it's gonna impact everyone for the better.
Thanks, Nina. Nina, JP, just as we wrap, where can folks find you? Are you on socials? Is there a place where they can connect with you? LinkedIn? I was trying to think of like a ridiculous old one. Meta. I'm just kidding. But yeah, just where are you at? Where can people connect with you?
Yeah, I'm on LinkedIn, basically LinkedIn.
Okay. LinkedIn.
And you can contact me at nroby@redhat.com.
Yeah.
I am also on LinkedIn, and I just started my journey on Blue Sky. There is a large and very clever group of SEOs that are already kind of banding together, and Blue Sky it's fun, and I'm there, just JP Sherman.
Cool. Well, thank you all for sharing. I'm also on LinkedIn, so feel free to connect with me there. It's linkedin.com/ I think it's just Joshua Eden is where I'm at. Feel free to connect with me there too. Lastly, if you want to dive a little bit deeper, this QR code on the left will get you a free accessibility health check on your website using our tool. We also have this monthly update that we send out in partnership with our dear friends and accessibility experts over at Quality Logic, where we give ally industry news roundup. So you can head over to the lumar.io blog, go to that industry news section, and you'll see our November 2024 roundup in partnership with our friends over at Quality Logic. And we look forward to seeing y'all at our next webinar on December 11th. 'tis the season to optimize your international site with Sophie Gibson and Rachel Powell from Lumar's professional services team, senior technical SEO. Hope everyone who is taking time off for the upcoming holidays has a lovely and restful time off. Thank you for joining us. We'll see you around. Bye.